Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. We're very, very glad you're with us. It's March 24th. You're with us for session number 12 today. For those people on Zoom, as soon as you think of a question, please just put your question in the chat box. As our speakers take a break, we are monitoring and we'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. And for those people on Facebook, please just put your questions into the comment field and we'll be sure to get those questions answered also. Please note this event is currently being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you happen to post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. I founded Career DFW back in 2008 to try to put everything for job seekers in one place for job seekers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I started CareerUSA.org to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've also written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. I also facilitate the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. I've been doing that since 2007. I'll tell you about our upcoming program this Friday at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. Well, when COVID started last April 15th, we put on our very first episode. I asked Walt and Mark to come up with something about interviewing, and they said, well, we can do it in 13 sessions. They thought 12 steps wasn't enough. We needed 13. So Mark McDonald, who leads the practice interview team, Walt Glass, who runs the Interview Success Workshop. Thank you for being here. And if you all want to introduce yourself, that would be great.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. And thanks for the introduction, Jeff. And yeah, it was pretty amazing after Walt and I got through putting down everything we wanted to talk about. It turned out to be like 20 hours worth of stuff. So it's all very important and very good. And who knew interviewing had so many things to talk about? I did. Today's, and so did Walt. So today's a very special day for me. It's the anniversary of my 31 years of marriage. So there we go. Had a spring wedding in 1990. So 31 years later. So you're probably wondering what we're going to do. We're going to go out to eat for Mexican food because the first date we went on was Mexican food.
I give you really great congratulations, and especially to your wife who put up with you for this long.
Yeah. There's another who knew. Who knew somebody could put up with me for that long? All right. So my story is I had a great career in the telecommunications industry, the equipment side, made the equipment that the phone companies use. But it started going downhill in 2000 in that recession. And I got laid off 3 times between 2002 and 2012. That was the 3rd time. But the opportunity at hand at that time was to get involved in the pit crew. And so that's what I did in 2013. And then in 2014, I started leading the pit crew. And let me tell you a little bit about it. This meeting that we're having today grew out of the education session that we'd have at the end of every pit crew meeting. So we used to get together in a church and we'd do 2 or 3, sometimes 4 interviews in different rooms in the church. And then we get together afterwards and talk about it. So everything that we talk about now on a weekly basis has come through the pit crew and Walt's experience as a career coach. And so when COVID hit, we put together a formal presentation. And so now we present it on Wednesdays. If you want to get involved in the pit crew, we give a mock interview to help you build your confidence, that you can interview well, that you have a voice for every situation. And we're really trying to get to the point where, answering questions and talking about yourself is not the main thing you focused on. The main thing you focus on is building rapport and making a connection with the interviewer. So when you're ready to do that, all you have to do is send in a job description and a resume, because the pit crew interviews are very personalized and customized to your situation. And the interviewers have all been hiring managers. They're all volunteers, so there's no charge for a pit crew practice interview. But they've all been hiring managers, and so they use the skills that they've developed as part of their professional responsibility to ask you questions, and then in the end you get an evaluation. And it's all recorded, so you can look at it afterwards, the interview and the feedback that comes afterwards. And you're welcome to practice as many times as you'd like. You can practice for different opportunities. You can practice for different levels in the interview. We had a candidate interview today for his 3rd round. He also practiced for his 2nd round. And interesting enough, I got to mention this, he's going to have a panel interview with 10 participants. So you may ask, how do you have a panel interview with 10 participants? And that was my question too. And so the panel put together and they answered that question. What would all 10 of the participants have in common? They would have in common, they'd be curious about your enthusiasm, how you work well with others, how you work in a team environment. And so that's what he got. He got 45 minutes worth of soft skill questions from the practice panel. So that's the kind of thing the PIT crew does, very customized and personalized to your situation and what's coming up. So send that information to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. I also encourage you to link in with me and just send me a note that say we met on Wednesday afternoons at the Interview Wednesday, and I'll add you to my LinkedIn network. And I also want to mention that I do a little bit of coaching, and I coach on one question only, and that's the question, why did you leave your last position? And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. We have a whole session, well, we have a whole half a session on answering that question. And if it's a pretty straightforward situation, you know, the webinar will probably be sufficient, but some people have much more complicated situations. And so we can have a confidential discussion and talk about how to answer that question and any follow-on questions that may be generated. And then finally, I'd like, if you would, if you're brand new to this meeting or to networking for a job, then please put that in the chat window. You know, one of the things we don't get to do because we're not face-to-face is we don't get to network. So make it easy for us to network with you by letting us know that you're a first timer. Just put that in the chat window, first time, and of course your name will show up. Well,
Mark, there's a question in the chat box. Carl's asking, can we volunteer to be on the PIT crew also?
You can volunteer to be on the PIT crew if you've been a hiring manager as part of your professional responsibility. We would love to have you, and it's very gratifying. You know, every moment in the PIT crew is a moment you're helping people. So yeah, it's possible.
And there's another question from Christopher. Is the PIT crew for Dallas area only? Well, that would only be when we were meeting in person, because it'd be tough to fly in for all the Wednesday.
Yeah. No, this is, you know, there's an upside to being virtual, and we have done interviews in California, Cleveland, Ohio, Florida, Atlanta. So yeah, people are starting to hear about this. Jeff's doing some outreach to some churches in different parts of the country. And so that's generating some requests for practice interviews. And yep, doesn't matter where you are, we can give you a practice interview.
Yep, just send the information to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. Thank you, yep. Mark. Walt, good afternoon. And you're muted.
I'm getting there. My finger's working. Good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's presentation about interviewing. So I offer the Interview Success Workshop, and that is truly a very informal setting. Just a couple of people at a time. You interview each other, you are asked questions from 11 basic categories of questions. And then we will look at motives, strategies, approaches, options, those kinds of things for that type of question. So we're kind of down in the fundamentals, and we're selling who we are, what we do, and how we help. So what are those, how do we sell those three things in an interview? And how do we gain the skills and confidence to do that? So a couple of questions for you. How much time did you spend on your resume, and how much time have you spent preparing for your interview? How much time do you think, or how many times do you think you ought to practice so that you can gain those skills and confidence? Once you know what to do and kind of how to do it, then we got to actually do it. I know lots of times I've said, well, I'm going to speak, or I'm going to do something in the meeting, and this is what I'm going to say, and this is what I'm going to do. Then I get in the meeting and all of that falls completely apart. I don't say it and I don't do it. So I got to practice some of those things. So we encourage you to practice and take advantage of the fact that we give you free information, free time We're all on your side. It's okay to mess up. That's why you're here. You're here to learn. So we would enjoy having you participate, because we would love to shorten your job search. That's where we really come from, by getting those confidence and skills for those interviews. So to register, what you need to do, just send me an email to my Yahoo address. The About section in LinkedIn talks about the workshop. We'd like to have some fun. You may as well have some fun while we are trying to improve our skills and confidence in this process. And so it's not a hot seat. You don't have to bring your stress and anxiety and your fears and concerns and all that sort of thing. People do a pretty good job, but we really need to focus on that three-legged stool. How do we present ourselves? Because the interview is a selling situation. We all agree that we're selling ourselves, and just what does that mean and how can we do that? So that's what I offer to you. Be glad to have you participate. I've got some information and I'll put into the chat window. It also gives us more information about that. So I'd love to have you come and participate. Now, I was given this announcement this morning, and some of you know Jack Bick. And when I said, and this workshop is learning without squirming, he said, kind of makes me think of worms. And I said, okay, this is going to be striving without thriving. No, that's not right. What was it? I can't remember now. I screwed that up.
So anyway, Walt, I hear your classes are going up 25% in April.
That's correct. That's correct. If you register now, I will give you a free handout and a free video that goes over the handout as part of the workshop. So you get your own video. Everybody loves looking at themselves on the video, but you need to know how you appear to other people online. So anyway, be glad to have you sign up. Yep, that 25% is going to go in pretty soon. So jump on board, get it while the iron is hot.
Get it while it's good.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Well, today is session number 12 of 13. It's hard to believe we've almost gone through this thing for the third time, or this series of workshops for the third time. Difficult interviewers, questions, and cultivating confidence. So, gentlemen, please take it away. And both the pit crew and Walt's thing is free, totally free. So we don't charge for anything.
I remember what it was now. It's thriving. I just forgot it. I have reached the age where I can forget anything I want, and I can repeat a story as many times as I want to.
So we're going to have to start doing outtakes. All right, everybody should see the my screen there. So we have
thriving without that gummit. This is killing me. I'm going to touch through this. Just give me a second. I will not rest until I get this right. Okay?
No pressure.
Something like, I don't know what it is.
When you think of it, you can write it down.
I will give up for now.
Put it in the chat window.
All right, I will.
So today, 3 topics: difficult interviewers, difficult questions, and cultivating confidence. We're going to spend most of the time on difficult questions, but you will encounter difficult interviewers. And sometimes they don't mean to be difficult, they're just difficult, but sometimes they do mean to be difficult as part of their assessment of how you handle a difficult situation or a difficult question. So that's the topic for today. Here's the whole series of 13 sessions, and we are now on session 12. So if you just joined us, and we have quite a few first timers, all of the previous sessions are available on YouTube channel Career USA. Jeff will give you some more information about that at the end, but you can go back and find all of these that we did earlier, and we're on 12 now. And so just to help you out with the organization, the first 5 of the series are all about preparing to interview. So every topic there is about preparing to interview, and we also have one on video interviewing, so tips for video interviewing. Then the second group of 5, 6 through 10 are about effective interviewing. And so there's some good topics there too, asking questions and demonstrating enthusiasm and how to build rapport in the interview. Some very good information there. And now we're in a group of 3, which are kind of special topics that build upon the previous information. And so we did target companies last week and informational interviews. And then this week, difficult interviewers and their difficult questions and cultivating confidence. And then next week, which will wrap up the series of 13, we're going to talk about the common mistakes that we see. So I often say knowing how to interview is not actually doing it. And so there's quite a few common mistakes that almost all the time, when there's a practice interview, we give feedback to the candidates about that. One of them is brevity. People tend to talk too long. But we'll go over all of those next week. And then to round it out, I think there's going to be a month. The month of April is going to be some guest speakers. Jeff's got some great people lined up, and then we're going to start the series again in May. But the important information there is if you've missed some of these and you'd like to review them, or if you think one of those areas might be an area of weakness for you, go back and look at the video. You know, they're not more than a couple of months old at this point. I will be taking questions. I'll be watching the chat window. I've got it open. So if you want to ask questions, just put them in there. I may answer them if I can right away, but we have built-in pauses to answer questions in between different sections. So let's get started with difficult interviewers. And what do I mean by a difficult interviewer? I got a list of 7 or 8 difficult interviews, and we're going to start with panel interviews. So panel interviews are difficult. Just because, and this is what happens in the pit crew, and one of the reasons we do panel interviews in the pit crew is because you know, the questions can come at you pretty rapidly. So the 2 people who aren't talking have time to prepare their questions or to ask a follow-on question. But the other reason we do it is that you get exposed to multiple personalities. So in one interview, you're going to have 3 different personalities and 3 different perspectives. And so they ask questions different ways. They're interested in different things. And so that's why we do panel interviews in the pit crew. The thing to know about panel interviews is it's really hard to build rapport. And sometimes they're not very long, you know, 30 or 45 minutes. And so you may not have time to figure out who's the operations person and who's the salesperson and who's the HR person. They may keep that from you. They may tell you, but you may also not know exactly what role they're representing. So you want to ask neutral questions in that case, which is not a question directed to any particular person. There's a whole session on asking questions. I think can't remember, session 7. That's a guess. Use indirect questions. And so indirect questions are a question in a question. So I'm curious to know, you know, let me find the asking questions is session 8. And so we also talk about indirect questions in session 8. Don't play favorites. So oftentimes we give feedback to candidates, you know, panelists to ask a question and say, oh, that's a great question. Well, that's just a throwaway phrase. It's a filler word, but you know, now you've told one panelist that they ask great questions and the other 2 are thinking, what am I, chopped liver? You know, so don't play favorites in a panel. Disagreeable or argumentative interviewers, the leading question interviewer, and how to avoid an argument. So some interviewers will be difficult just to be difficult, just to put you under some stress, okay? And I think you should expect to be put under some stress in some manner during a cycle of interviews. When I was hiring people, we would always have in the second round. So the first round was a phone interview. So I usually did the phone interviews to make sure that I wasn't going to be wasting my team's time bringing in a candidate. So then they'd come in the interview. And then on the 3rd round, if they made it to the 3rd round, we'd invite them back to give a presentation. And so in that presentation, we'd have several people and we'd ask them questions during the middle. We'd interrupt them and things like that. So see, to test 2 things, right? Put them under some stress, how well they deal with you know, a presentation. And interesting enough, some candidates who seemed very good were not able to handle that. They just didn't have that experience. But also to, you know, stress them by interrupting them, asking them questions, and and seeing how they react on their feet in real time, because that was, part of the job, was being in front of the customer and dealing with objections. So, but in this case, they may just be disagreeable. I've heard interesting stories where they'll do things. One that really upset one young lady was the interviewer got up and walked around behind her and started writing stuff on the board, the whiteboard, while she was talking. And, that really discombobulated her. So now, how do you deal with the leading question interview? But this might be, wouldn't you agree with me that you're overqualified? Okay, so that's a leading question. And really and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about it, but just don't take the bait. Just don't take the bait. Okay, this is a question, are you going to agree with them and disagree with them? Are you overqualified or not overqualified? There's two parts of that question. Well, you don't need to be disagreeable, first of all, and you don't necessarily need to answer the question because there's something behind the question. So if you get a leading interviewer or an argumentative interviewer, consider the motivation behind the question. Okay, just don't take the bait of how the question is phrased when it was given to you. Now, you may have a legitimate kind of disagreement. They may say, they may ask you a question, how would you approach this, that, or the other thing? And so you give them an answer and they say, no, I don't think that'll work. Why don't you think, X, Y, and Z is the best way to go? And so you may have a little back and forth on that. As a matter of fact, some interviewers may want you to have a little back and forth, but at some point, you're going to have to settle this. And one way to settle an argument without agreeing or disagreeing is to say, you may be right. You may be right. Okay, very diplomatic way to end if it's heating up, if it's taken over the interview and that's not good for you, then just bow out gracefully. You may be right. The really friendly interviewer. I have a good story about this. Amazon was interviewing a candidate. It was the second round. HR people are typically want to put you at ease. They're concerned that that you're relaxed and you aren't anxious, and so they'll try to put you at ease. But don't forget, you're in an interview, and so this is what was going on in this second round interview with this candidate. I was on the phone for Amazon, and about the 5 minutes into the interviewer, the candidate realized that the HR person that was screening him had asked two questions or brought up two topics that he was expected to provide answers to, and he just thought they were having a little conversation. So he recovered, he managed to work in the answers to those two questions, and then, realized that this was just the friendly interviewer's style. You may think you're having a conversation, but you are being quizzed, okay? And so don't let the opportunity to answer a question and to provide some detail go by. Now, one of the things we say when we, about showing enthusiasm and building rapport is, try to get the interviewer into a conversation. But really, it's a dialogue, okay? Because this points out, a conversation is kind of a open-ended thing. It may not have any kind of direction. It may not have any time limits. When you're talking to your friends, they can wander around, and but an interview is not that at all. Both sides are trying to gain information, and the candidate is trying to provide on purpose that information. So it's more of a dialogue. So you don't necessarily want to have a wandering, agreeable, friendly conversation. You want to have a dialogue, and you want to have dialogue with purpose. And the purpose is for you to help them understand how you can help them. So when you get that really friendly interviewer, remember that, right? Okay, the chatty interviewer, the distracted interviewer, the unprepared or uninformed interviewer. So these are all three kind of one part of the same problem, okay? The chatty interviewer is going to talk so much that you don't get a chance to say what you want to say. The distracted interviewer, you may not sure they're listening, or they've got, something else that their mind's engaged in. And the unprepared or uninformed interviewer, this happens more than people think, but you might have a series of interviews lined up, and So one of the people can't make it, they're sick, or they get called into an important meeting. So with very little preparation, a new person gets recruited to be on your interview or be a panelist on your interview. And so they're not really prepared, or and they appear to be uninformed or not prepared, just not ready. They may also be distracted, So this is where your preparation comes in. And if you've analyzed the job description like we recommend, if you prepared a T cover letter like we recommend, where you matched up what they need with what you can offer, then you can just help out these distracted or unprepared interviewers by offering to tell them the story. Would you like to hear about a time where I did blank, and give one of the results of your star stories, your accomplishment stories, and then just start taking, you can say, well, I have your job description here, and I noticed that you asked for this experience or this skill. So let me tell you about it. And so you can just start answering the question. So even if they're, now with a chatty interview, you might have to kind of interrupt them or just take a moment to get in between a breath and ask a question. With a distracted interviewer, same kind of deal. You can help them focus on you by answering relevant questions, just offering the question and then giving the answer. And same way with the unprepared, uninformed interviewer, this is where that really helps. But that's a technique, and be prepared, to take over the interview if necessary. If they're struggling, to stay focused. That's all I can say, and it happens quite a bit. Now, even though they're unfocused or they may be chatty, they're still going to make an assessment of your candidacy. So it's especially dangerous, I think, with the chatty interviewer who talks and talks and talks. You hardly get to say anything, and then you got to really wonder what they're going to say about you. What did they base the decision on? Because you only got to talk for 5 minutes. So don't let the interviewer dominate the conversation without trying to break in with some of your own information. The silent treatment. So here's another one that HR will do. So they can be very friendly. And then they may ask you a tough question about, tell me a time where you made a big mistake, cost the company a lot of money. And so you give the answer, and crickets. They just don't say anything. And so most people will find that very awkward and start filling in extra details, start ad-libbing. And that's exactly what the interviewer is after is, okay, what's the story behind the story? And just don't take that bait. You can just say, did I answer your question? Or you can offer to tell them another story, similar to the distracted or the chatty interviewer. So the silent treatment, it's a thing, it happens. The very technical question. So I call this the impossibly difficult question. It's related to the off-the-wall question, but it's more focused, right? So they may ask you to solve a problem that's related. I mean, it's work related. That's just, impossible. I mean, you couldn't solve it in hours if you had hours. Really, it's a question about the process you would use to answer the question. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And what kind of information that you might need, additional information that you might need to answer that question. So don't let the very technical question throw you off. Just tell them how you go about it. I mean, some people will call a buddy. I got a friend who works in that industry. I think I'll call them. Some people will go to their resource material, the internet, for instance, or a standards book. Some people might call or get in contact with an expert in the field. So there's different ways you can answer that question, and how you answer that question reveals how you think and how you solve problems. So the very technical question, they're not really looking for the answer. They're looking for the process. Okay, Walt's going to give his perspective. Do we have any questions that I can answer? Jeff? Nope. Yes, okay. How quickly can one identify the different types of interviewers? Yes, it can change and they may not be disagreeable the entire time. And you might be able to get them out of their bad mood if they're just in a bad mood. So yeah, you might encounter multiple personalities in one interview. That's true. Often use the "did I answer your question" quite a bit. Is there anything else you can use instead of "did I answer your question"? You do need to use that judiciously. You can say, "Did I answer your question? Would you like to hear more information?" And then you can say, "Would you like to hear about?" So now you may be changing the subject there. Would you like to hear about a time where I saved the company $1 million? But there's just all ways to, get the interview back on track if they've stalled or if you're getting the silent treatment. Yeah. Okay, that's the 2 questions. Walt, you're up.
I'll try to recover, if at all possible, on thriving without writhing. And I'm just so thankful this wasn't a one-way recorded interview. That was my response to the question. That's what went to the hiring manager. So let's continue on. So we've got a difficult interview. It's a little bit different perspective, a little bit different idea to talk about how we can handle them. So you look at all the different types and things that you might encounter. And so one approach that we might use is to engage them in a conversation, all right? Now, of course, asking a question and saying, I noticed in the job description this, and would you like me to hear, that's kind of beginning to get that engaged in the conversation. But if you can get them talking back and forth with you and to engage, that can certainly help. So ask questions to show that you really care. Now, questions are really critical in an interview. I always suggest that you prioritize your list of questions that determine whether you want to work there or not. What's the most important thing to you? What do you need to find out from them? We are selling, so what are they buying? Those kind of questions. And so when we ask good questions that care, that's going to help us build that rapport and make that connection with our interviewer. So one of the good ways you can start out with that is ask them about themselves, all right? Something about them to get them engaged. But particularly if you got that chatty interviewer, they like to talk about themselves. And so Scientific American says, we enjoy doing that. I mean, who doesn't? Who doesn't like to be asked something where, hey, you're interested in knowing something that I can tell you, and that kind of question. And so I feel good about that. So that can help us engage, get a little bit better. Now, I don't know how many of you know Jeff Crilly. He gives some presentations with Jeff's Friday group from time to time. And he has translated the words that Mark and I say so often about other things in meaning the same thing. And said, well, through this conversation, which is what we want to get to in an interview, they see our homework, our knowledge, our good questions, our interest in them, and they don't mind seeing us every day, which means, they like us. They would enjoy working with us. And so what are we doing in there to demonstrate and show those things through that interview? So when you get a difficult interviewer and you're saying a question, you say, well, I was listening to the last quarterly earnings report from your website, and the CEO was saying that you need to develop more products that have a higher margin. And so tell me what's going on about that in the company. And why do I ask that? Because I'm a product developer. I'm in product management, that sort of thing. So those things are great because it shows interested, it shows your knowledge, all the same thing. That's going to help turn things around. So I'm done with my little piece on the difficult interviewers. I think Mark covered everything quite well, but I will, if you've got another question or two, we'll certainly take some time.
Yeah, well, Greg asked, how do you deal with the panel interview when they have a list of questions to ask you before you can tell them anything? I mean, like how do you try to just break into that?
Okay, that's a good question too, because we would like to have a chance to have an opening statement of some kind. And so if they just break right into it, and the first question isn't what brings you here, tell me about yourself, or some generic question where you're actually given the actual opportunity to do that, and they just start going into a write a question, then you might just say, Yeah, I'd be glad to answer that question. So can I just tell you a couple of things about me first before I get into that question? And just ask permission. You don't want to take over. You don't want to just ignore the question and tell it. Always staying on their agenda. So if you want to do something different than what they're saying, you ask permission to do so. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit about me to get started in something so that then I'll be glad to answer. Would that be all right with you? That kind of thing. So that's one suggestion.
Hey, Walt, this is Greg. Yes, I tried that and they said, no, we have a list of questions that we must cover. So we need to proceed with these. So
well, it's their show, their agenda. We go with them. If you don't want to agree and do what they want to do, we're in trouble, right? So you don't have much choice.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you can always tell them later on. It says your interviewing style is not very strong, not very effective, not very good. Then you can work on helping them improve their interviewing skills.
Yeah, but that's so what Walt says exactly right. And you may not find out that they have a list of questions until you try to offer to tell, something that's not on the list. So, but ask that question. And would you like to hear a story about, or can I tell you a little bit more about myself before I answer your question, and then they'll respond and you'll know.
Yeah, one good question might be, would you like to know why I'm interested in this job in this company before I answer that question? That kind of thing can help. All right, anything else? If they're really hard, I'll let Mark answer them.
And I'll refer to Walt.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, time to, we're gonna switch again. Okay, we gotta back and forth here.
Well, I can do it if you want me to.
There we go. Okay, audience participation time. And we're going to take a couple of minutes on this because you guys need to study up and select 3 of these questions. I guess there's 9 of them there. 3 of the 9 that give you the heebies, the willy jillies, like, don't ask me that question, please. It's tough. So go ahead and start filling in your selection.
You might have to expand your window or scroll to see all of the A through I questions.
Yes, on mine.
So take a minute to look at them and to pick your 3.
And for those people on Facebook, just pick 3 letters and just put it in the comment field. If I'd known, I could have had music right here. We could have had Jeopardy music.
Music, yeah. So we use this information to make sure we cover the most important things on your mind. And so we use the information from our last meeting back in the fall. We'll also compare to see if there's any different this time. We have changed the questions up a little bit, so it won't be an exact comparison between last time, but yeah, the information is very helpful for all tonight to know which questions are giving you the most difficulty. All right, well, we've got 17 people who, 16, okay, here we go. Now they're coming through, good. All right, 2 minutes. Are we wrapped up? It looks like we may have gotten all the answers we're going to get. About 75% of you voted, so thanks for that. So let's see, the winner is, let me make sure I got them all here. What did you not like about your last job, your last company, or your last boss? What was your greatest failure? Okay, that one, yeah, that one can be tough, definitely. That's number 1. Let's see, number 2 looks like C. Let's look at C. I see that you do not have blank, some specific job requirement, or that was C or E, don't you think you're overqualified for this position? And then also salary information request are 46%. And then after that is, what are your greatest strengths or weaknesses? Okay, and one you don't seem to be particularly concerned about is, why are you interested in this job or this company? So that's your motivation statement. And the tell me about yourself, that's pretty low. So, okay, there you go. You see anything there you want to comment on, Walt?
Oh, you did fine.
I think I missed one because it was off the bottom of my screen. I was 27. What was the last reason for leaving your last 3 companies? 27%. All right, well, let's get a screen capture of that and go on. So I posted up a document, the 64 toughest interview questions and how to answer them. Oh, I forgot to go over this. Okay, so we're going to address all of those questions that were there, but some in more detail than others, because some of those questions we cover extensively in other sessions. So the tell me about yourself is in session 6. The why are you interested in this job and company is also in session 6. And then 2 questions, the salary question and the reason for leaving the last 3 positions, are covered in depth in session 7. So, but we're going to address them briefly here, but there's a lot more detail available in those sessions. And so you can see the other questions there are all addressed in this session. Okay, so here's the document and there's the link to it, but it's right in your chat window. You can open it up, click on it, and it'll download it to your computer. 64 toughest interview questions and how to answer them. And I'm not going to go over all 64. I picked out a handful to share with you that I thought would be the most helpful. And then one I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail on, so you can just see it's a good question. It's worth delving into today, but it also gives you a good example of how the other questions, the other 63 questions in that document, how much detail is provided. So that's what you're going to see coming up next. So I highly encourage you to read this document. It's about 20 pages, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. How to answer hypothetical questions, a couple of hypothetical questions, which are a little tricky. On confidential matters. So you may get asked a question that's going to require you, if you were to answer it, to share some confidential information. And so this pits your desire to be cooperative and to provide an answer to their question against your integrity. And so always choose integrity. And so that's one of the things. There's several questions in the document that cut to integrity. You know, you may be asked about the weakness of your, what did you dislike about your previous boss? So you don't really want to talk about people. So choose integrity. Choose integrity, right? And so I'm not going to go over it here, but go explore this in the document on how you do that, right? How do you answer that question and maintain your integrity and still be somewhat, well, don't appear to be uncooperative. How about that? Here's another one. What would you say to your boss if he's crazy about an idea, but you think it stinks? Okay, so the goal here is to be honest with your boss. So this question pits loyalty and honesty against each other. All right, so you want to be loyal to your boss, but you also want to be honest with them that they've come up with a stinker of an idea. So there you go, choose integrity. You owe your boss honesty, and of course you need to be diplomatic about it. But if you have, the other side of this, if you have a boss that doesn't really want you to be honest with them, then you got deeper problems. So offer them honesty diplomatically and feel good about that. And certainly this is not a situation where you're actually doing it, but you're explaining how you would do it. Definitely, you've been asked by an interviewer, and so there's your answer. And if the boss still wants to pursue the idea, you're going to be supportive. Absolutely. So here's one of the ones that were in the top group. I'm concerned that you don't have as much experience as we'd like in blank, as much experience as we'd like in customer service, as much experience as we like in using a tool. So now what's important here is that you've asked the questions up front. After you've made your opening statement or early in the interview process, you've found out what their most important priorities are. And you need to ask every interviewer that, because they may not all have the same answer. As a matter of fact, you can expect them to have different answers, their perspective on what are the most important priorities. So now you pull that out. This is the time to use that information. When they say you don't have enough, then you want to talk about the combination of experience that you have, how the totality of the evidence supports that you're a good candidate, even though you may have the least experience in customer service, for example. Now, that'll work if you know what's important to them. If you don't know what's important to them, you're going to struggle to answer this question, because it's pretty declarative if it's true, unless they've made some mistake. They get to decide how much experience they want, and if you don't have it, your counter to that is to talk about the combination of skills you have. You might even ask them a question after you provide your answer. How would they weight this skill in the total? What's the importance relative to all the other skills? But then, it'd be better if you knew that in front. That's how you approach that question. This one, I like this one. I like this one a lot. How do you feel about working nights and weekends? And so the answer, pretty straightforward. I've done it before whenever the company needed me to. What's the norm for your best people here? This is why I like this question. Okay, so you've given an answer. What's the norm for your best people here? Because you want to be one of their best people. That's why I like that question so much. And you're going to find out about their culture. You're going to find, the best people, the people that get promoted, how many nights and weekends do they work? So that can inform your decision as well, whether you want to go to work there or whether you want to join in and show them how it's really done. So the fatal flaw question. Okay, we're going to spend quite a bit of time on this one. And this is kind of the short answer. You want to match your qualifications to their most important priorities. There it is again. You need to know what their most important priorities are, and you find that out by asking them early in the interview. What are your most important priorities? Can you share with me your perspective on what the most important things are on the job description? What was it about my background you think is going to make the most impact here? So those are all different kinds of ways. And in the session on openings and closings, we talk about that. Session 6, and then also in asking questions, session 8, we talk about it also. So this is very important, but that's how you generally address the fatal flaw. You're missing something, but I have all these other things that you need that are very important to you. Okay. Now there's a little deeper way to go. Let's dig into that. Here we go. Come on, mouse. Okay, here we go, finally. If the interviewer, and this is in the document, so I'm going to go over exactly what it says in the document, and I'm going to encourage you again to go read it yourself and study it. Be prepared for when these questions come up. If an interviewer has read your resume carefully, they may try to zero in on a fatal flaw. Okay, you don't have a degree, you're not a CPA, you don't have this certification, et cetera, okay? Maybe you've been out of work for a while, you're not current, you're not up to the latest tools. So this question can be difficult to overcome. Don't sugarcoat this, okay? But usually only if you respond by being overly defensive. Overly defensive. So here's how to answer that question. It's kind of an objection, right? It's very much when you are buying something and you object to, you know, the cost or the features, or it doesn't have this or it doesn't have that. And so some of these objections will be voiced. This one was a particular voice, but there may be objections that aren't voiced. The key is not to exacerbate the buyer's anxiety, but to diminish it. Okay, so now they're anxious, concerned that you're not going to have something that's an essential skill. It may be their own personal opinion that it's in the job description, and so it's a very important thing that must be met. Or it could actually be, you know, something that's essential to the job that you don't have, but could be overcome. So here's how to overcome it. So be completely honest. This candidate we interviewed today, young man, and so he was asked about his teamwork, experience, and by the time where it didn't go well, and so he was quite forthright. I was very impressed with his answer, because he said, yeah, you know, early in my career, and he wasn't that deep into his career, he's maybe 5 years. He said, I had an issue with that, I worked on it. Okay. So be completely honest, open, and straightforward about admitting the shortcoming, whatever it was. Do not apologize or try to explain it away. Okay. You may know that this supposed flaw is nothing to be concerned about. Okay. And this is the attitude that you want the interviewer to adopt as well. So this is the case where how you answer the question and the confidence you approach it with is going to go a long ways towards soothing the nerves of the interviewer that asks you about it. And then add that as desirable as such a qualification may be, its lack has made you work all the harder throughout your career and has not prevented you from compiling an outstanding track record of achievement. Okay, so you haven't had this for years. You've worked with people who have, you recognize the value of it, but it hasn't held you back. As a matter of fact, you've excelled. And you can give examples, for example. And through your relentless commitment to excellence, you've consistently outperformed those who have this qualification. So this is falling back on your track record. You know, even though I don't have this particular skill, and even though some people who use it have been very successful, I've been even more successful. Now, the ultimate way to answer this question is to address their most important requirements. So you get them up front to say, what's the most important requirement? If having a CPA or a certain certification doesn't come up as the most important requirement, then it's farther down on the list. And so you fall back to the previous kind of answers to questions by summarizing all the things that you do have that meet their needs. So I think I'm just about done. These are just a few examples of difficult questions. And once again, please take advantage of that document. If you sign up for a pit crew interview, I will send that document to you along with several others, but it's right there in the chat window for you to retrieve as well. 64 toughest questions. Walt, switch over here.
Okay. Let me tag on to what Mark was saying. In your preparation, and you go through a job description, you look at requirements, and you see requirements that you do not have, then that's the time for you to figure out how you're going to prepare a response for not meeting that requirement. So you do it ahead of time. Get it prepared. So, all right, for example, let's say the PMI certification. And I always think about how we put a man on the moon without a single certified project manager. But nonetheless, what are you doing about that? So I'm familiar with the PMBOK. For you project managers, you know what that is, the Project Manager Book of Knowledge. I use its tools, I use its processes, I've been doing, so you give information that says, while I'm not certified, I have been doing this stuff and used this stuff in the past, and I still continue to use it now.
Walt, we're looking at your desktop, not the slide presentation.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Well, let me stop that. I did not double click on my desktop. I double clicked on the screen, but maybe I just clicked on the wrong thing.
There we go. Now you're good.
I hope that by the time we're through with this dadgum Zoom stuff, I'll have it mastered. All right. So anyway, let's talk about the difficult questions. Now, some of us would define a difficult question as the one I don't know the answer to. All right. So they're all tough when you don't have an answer to it, right? So we want to try to prepare as much as we can, but we certainly can't prepare for everything, right? But the selection of questions were picked not just to say, here's a particular question and here's how you would approach this particular answer. It's a category of questions. It's these types of questions that we can address and put the same type of philosophy and response and idea about how we respond to it in that way. So that's one of the most powerful things about it. All right, let's see. Let me get past all these. So what's the motivation behind a tough question? I don't see a whole lot of interviews and hear a lot of them that say, tell me about when everything was going smoothly and everything was wonderful and you enjoyed yourself and that sort of thing. About the only time I've heard that kind of question is something like, you've had an excellent day, a really good day. When you went home, you were feeling so good. What happened that day? I mean, I might hear something like that. But most of the time is, when you have a tough customer, when you have a tough employee, when was the project going south? Well, it's all the negative type stuff that we hear. They say, well, how do you handle that? Well, that's where our value really comes in, because, almost everything we do in our job world is overcoming barriers to success. It's like this happens. How do you handle that? How do you still be successful? So why do they ask these questions in the beginning? They really want to know some information about us, because how you answer these things is going to reduce risk in hiring you. That's a major concern. Now, sometimes we think that the hiring process is one of deselection. They're looking for reasons not to hire us. But for those of you who have interviewed people in your job, in your role, don't you hope that this person across from you is the one you want to hire? Isn't this the one you'd rather this process stop? You want to find somebody? I mean, it's a really positive mindset in that I really want to hire you, all right, rather than I'm looking for reasons not to. So it's kind of a mindset. So what can you say in your opening statement? We talked about openings and closing in another session. They want to know about our thought process. How do we think? How do we process? How do we take action on these difficult things that may be facing us? How do you approach those things? So they're interested in that. So it's not necessarily just the actions we took, but how we arrived at that. What process? What did we do first? What did we do second? What did we do third? Because that gives the process of what's going on. I can remember when I was accused of bait and switch by one of my customers. And so what was my thought process? One was I was so emotionally upset. I couldn't do anything. Second thing is I notified all my management chain all the way up that I've got a major client here that's upset. You may get some information from it. I'm on top of it. Number three, I went through that process of what I did. So that helped give them some ease of saying, yeah, when you get something difficult, you're paying attention to the right things in the right order, the right process to accomplish them. So that story gives a lot of good information about doing that. And they want to say, what's your experience level, comfort with the difficult part? Do you like, a lot of people say, I like challenge, all right? Well, the challenges that I like the most are the ones that I know how to figure out and do. The challenges that I have to really bear down and find out, figure out, learn, ask other people, try to, all that sort of thing. Those are the tough ones. Guess what? Job search is a tough challenge. Do you like challenges? Well, you got one now. Are you enjoying your job search? Are you thriving in it? No, it's a little bit difficult on the things we don't really enjoy doing. So when you get the difficult employee or whatever it might be, so what is it that how you answer that, and can you support your process of how you resolve that particular thing with employee as an example? So here's something that we can do for every question that's asked. Why are they asking this question now? What's the motive behind the question? Because we need to answer motives sometimes even more so than the question itself. We are very, very trained to just respond to the question without thinking about the motive behind it. For example, if somebody says, well, tell me, how do you deal with a team or interdepartmental collaboration that's not going very well? Now I'm thinking in my mind, I said, I wonder how the collaboration is going inside of this company right now with these departmental teams. I bet you it's not going as well as it could be, because that's why they're asking me this question. So I might answer this question, then I might come back to them and say, well, tell me, how would you describe the collaboration that exists today? You know, and come back with that question, because it sounds like something's going on there. And so why from this person? Is this the CEO? Is this the HR? Is this the recruiter? Is it the hiring manager? Is it the team player? I mean, are they in finance? Are they in operations? Are they in sales? You know, why is this person asking this question? And then why now? Is it right up front? The salary question right up front is an obvious knockout question. The purpose behind that is to quit or move forward. That's all it is. So we can ask ourselves this to help us formulate a better response in their frame of reference. What are they thinking? How are they thinking? How can we answer that? We don't ever want to be negative or complain about anything. Now, a couple of the questions that were marked on the high percentages fall into the negative question category. I don't like negative questions. I'm not supposed to be negative, but they said, what you didn't like about your last boss? Okay. Well, the fact that I could never talk to him, you know, and you start complaining about the boss. So we don't want to do that kind of response. So how do we handle those kind of things? So let me give you an example. Common questions are, what do you not like about your last job, company, or boss? So we'll talk about negative questions in a minute. And one way to do this when we have a difficult question is don't draw them out, for Pete's sakes. Don't dig into the negative, into a lengthy verbose thing about all the negativity or something, or explain to me all of the difficulty and the way things were happening and how things were changing so fast. And if your boss called, be sure and get their name, because we were changing all the time. You know, we spent all this time trying to explain how something negative happened, how the atmosphere. Just forget all that stuff, because you're just digging yourself a grave. So start with brevity and let them ask for more. For every question, that is a good general rule. Now, someone asked in the chat window, said, did I answer your question? Here's how you can avoid that. If you have a question asked to you and you're not certain what they mean, you have crossed the threshold to ask for clarification. So let's find out. Let's don't assume this is what they mean. Let's ask for clarification up front so that we can then respond to the correct question. But then as you're going through a response and you're reading them and they're saying, they're looking like something's not right here, maybe I'm off track, I might even stop in the middle of it, because the way they're acting is very weird. So I'll come back and say, am I on the right track? Is this the kind of thing? Is this kind of information you wanted to know? All right, so you can do that. Or at the end, you know, you start with a brevity, you give it pretty brief, and you can come back and say, maybe I was too brief here. I felt like that. Maybe they want some more information. So I say, well, did I answer your question? And then if they want to know more information, they can come back. But I would not use that. You're right, judicious use. I think that was the term Mark said. You can't do that every time. Anytime you repeat something over and over and over again, I've had people say after every question that was asked, that's a good question. That's a good question. That's a good question. No, I got tired. I started counting the number of times I didn't even know what their answer was. So we can't repeat that thing over and over again. So let's talk about a few of the difficult questions with a little bit of information. And I'll point you to more detailed information in the sessions that Mark had mentioned on that slide previously. So tell me about yourself. This is one of the most key things that we should prepare. Well, we're going to have to tailor it to the job description of the job, the situation, who we're talking to, that sort of thing. But in general, there's certain things we want to accomplish in that opening statement. So we need to have pretty much a prepared outline of the things we want to say in that. And this is a 90-second deal, as with any other question. For me, I like to include who I am, what I do, and how I help you. Somewhere in that opening, I can describe myself, or I can say, people tell me that I am detail-oriented, I'm excellence-driven, I'm really customer-focused. And with that experience of implementations and developing software systems, I'm able to, and I give a result. I'm helping to increase retention of our current customers, add new customers, bring in X number of revenue, something like that. All in one sentence, I said, I am, I do, I help, all in that. We can prepare that to help us be brief on it. And then at the end, anytime you get to tell me about yourself question or why are you here, those kind of introductory questions up front, we strongly recommend you do what salespeople do, which is find out their needs. Yes, you have a job description. How much can we depend on the job description? Some, but not all, right? Job descriptions aren't always well done. Interviewers are not really good sometimes at interviewing. We need to help in both cases. So at the end, I think there's two questions we can ask, not consecutively, but soon up front. What kind of person are you looking for? What are the characteristics of the successful person? And basically, the how can I help you question. Is there, what is it that I can do for you so that you're so glad you hired me in the, after about 9 months? In other words, give me a list of the achievements that you want so that I can then have a conversation with you about exactly how I can have done that in the past and achieve that, and I can do it here for you. So tell me about yourself is pretty critical, that opening. So when you go back to the videos, look at the openings and closings session about that to get some more details. All right, let's get into those negative questions and what you not like about job company or anything that's negative, all right? So let's just talk about an approach to negative questions in general. First of all, if they ask for anything in plural, do not answer negative questions in plural. What are your strengths? That's positive, that's good. I can answer that in the plural. Well, tell me about your recent mistakes. I'm going to ignore recent, I'm going to ignore plural. But the big thing is, if you are just going to be answering the questions, you'll do like one person said, well, one of my mistakes was this, and another one was this, and the third one was this. And I said, okay, stop, time out. I said, that's not what you need to do here. He said, but I'm answering the question. I said, okay, you go ahead and answer the question. What is your probability of getting hired? All right, and so that's a little different thing, right? So just give one and stop. And if they want some more negatives, let them ask for more. Generally, one will answer the motive about that particular negative question and they're satisfied with it. So ignore Risa. And when we pick a negative, and we pick something about a job company or boss, we want to pick something that's really not that significant. It's just not a big deal, all right? My last manager was difficult for me to find out, to get in to see him and communicate with him. So what I did was I would schedule periodic meetings with him, get on his calendar to do that so that I could meet him periodically. And you're done. You're finished. Now, did you really complain about the manager? Not really. All managers kind of hard to get in to see sometimes, and here's what I did about it. And so it was just not a big deal about that as an example. Whatever the negative is, frame it. I mean, work on this. What's the fewest number of words you can use to describe the negative? All right. Sometimes I don't listen like I should. Woo-wee, that's an important thing. Maybe I don't want to pick that one. So I'm working on my listening skills to make sure that and then here's what I do about the listening skill, that I listen to others. I repeat what they say to me. What is it that I do to show that I am working and I'm doing well on my listening? So we want to tell the truth, but not the awful truth. All right. You don't have to go into detail about everything that went on. You can tell this is what happened. And so but you don't have to go into great detail about not only did we miscommunicate on that, but I lost revenue of $5,000. Okay. I don't need to go into the lost revenue piece. I can just say, here's one of the impacts that I resolved in that particular situation. And we're going to finish the negative question with a positive. So many of you have heard this before. So weaknesses, I'm going to pull weaknesses back and forth, but I'll mention another slide. But here is, I'm going to guess that most of you, when you marked what your strengths and weaknesses, said that was high on my question because of the weaknesses side of it, not the strength side of it. It's the weaknesses that bother us. So who likes to admit weaknesses? Who likes to admit things we don't do very well? And who is fearful that when we admit that weaknesses, we won't get the offer? I mean, there's a lot of negative thoughts going through our mind. So we need to prepare for that one as well. And so we all have weaknesses. Motive behind it. Are you aware of your weaknesses? Are you willing to admit what your weaknesses are? Right? And how do you manage and or develop that, whatever it might be? That's going to reduce risk and concern. If you just try to say, gee, I can't think of any right now or something like that, you know, and you just blow it off, you're going to be dead. That's just not going to work. So get that kind of prepared. Mistakes. Again, not in the plural. What is the briefest number of words, the fewest number of words you can use to say the mistake? And then you turn right around and say, and here's what I learned from it. What's the difference between a mistake and a failure? Somebody jump in on just hit your space bar if you set that up. Tell me what you think the difference is between a mistake and a failure.
I'll do it.
All right.
So a failure is something that you did and it was obviously wrong, but it's not something that you can go back on, redo or anything. But a mistake is something that you did that was incorrect, but you can go back and you can look at and you can learn from or try to figure out how to rectify it.
Any other suggestions? So my question to you on that answer is, can't we learn from our failures too? I know a person who, he screwed up pretty royally in our company, and it was really a firing offense. So he got fired. And I said, we just fired one of the best employees we had for this mistake that he made. Yes, it was significant, but he's going to go to some other company like our competitor to do a really good job, and he'll never do that again. And we've lost a great employee. So I'm going to tell you what I think the difference is between a failure and a mistake. It's the significance of the learning. So when I hear a failure question, I'm looking for something that really was a big deal for you and a significant learning example of how you really learned something big. It changed your approach in your job. It changed your leadership style. It changed the processes or something it was something big, all right? Now, the neat thing is, it doesn't have to be a big thing to have a great learning, all right? I read The 1 Minute Manager. This came out years ago, and one of the principles in that book was catch somebody doing something right. So if I were to ask, what was your biggest failure? I said, well, when I read that book, I realized I need to change my leadership style into one of giving people approval, giving them public recognition, thanking them for the contributions they're making on a regular basis. Because I was thinking, you know, not very many people ever receive positive news and get thanks and the recommendation for the things they're doing. So I didn't even mention what the negative was. I implied that I wasn't doing this before, I'm doing this now. And so, but that was really significant, something that changed me. Okay, enough on that one. So I suggest that we don't use star stories for negative situations. You know, sometimes they come out to that, but I recommend we keep it brief, keep it short, the whole answer, you know, within 30 seconds or less. So many of you mentioned the overqualified question and you're concerned about being that. So if you have your participant window up, well, don't do that. In your chat window, tell me what is your biggest fear about the overqualified question? Why are you worried about that one? Ageism, The job itself, they've already decided that they're not going to hire you. They already start giving you reasons why not to hire. Okay. It's already negative. It's not a fit. Will not be good enough. Okay. Yeah, you might be a threat to the manager because you know more about it than they do. Okay. So let me suggest some approaches for this. And let me start with what do I typically hear? Expensive. Yeah, might require a lot of money. That's a good motive. Botox. Okay, so get your Botox 6 weeks before your interviews, right? And then you can age right in front of them as it wears off. All right. Here's what I typically hear. No, I don't think so. And then follows this detailed explanation, all the skills, experience, all the things that I can bring to you. Man, I can do so many things. You would just love to have me, okay? That's what I hear most of the time for the answer to this question. So my question to you now is, what did we just do? First thing, we said no. Well, they asked us because they think we are, so we disagree with them. So now we're in an argumentative state. Don't you think you are? Because they think we are. And we said, no, we're not. I don't think that's going to help us anywhere by disagreeing with them and tell them, no, we're not. Secondly, with all the detail and information of everything, all we've done is confirm that we're overqualified because of all the things we bring up. That's, yeah, they know that. That's why they're concerned. So let's not use that particular technique. Let's do it this way. First, when you look at a job, target right. Is this a job that, hey, number one, I really want? Is this the right company? All right. Is this the kind of responsibilities and things that I enjoy doing? And if I don't do these things, is that okay? Right? So there's different parameters and different decision points of taking a job. One of the things that I'm concerned about with people, they say, well, I've got this job and I can do it. Right? When I hear that phrase, that means they are going backwards in, I can do this job. And I think that's going to be the attitude you have in the job itself. You'll just be doing it because you can't do it. But where's the challenge? Where's the things that you like in a job? Where's the growth potential? All that kind of thing. So target right for the kind of job that you're looking for. Now we can agree with them. It's okay. Well, then if you say I'm overqualified, then you would agree that I'm qualified, right? It's just to getting them to turn kind of negative into a positive, to be saying, no, well, of course you are. All right. So my strategy is two things. Convince them that regardless of my past and experience and all the things I've done there, this is where I want to focus. This is the kind of activity. These are the kind of requirements. These are the kind of things that I really enjoy doing. These are the ones I want. All the background and experience I have helps me do a really good job of this particular focus in this particular area. And this is the place where I want to do it. So I want to give them some reasons why this is the job for me. And I don't want to say this job is a perfect fit. I mean, how many people do you think say that? Give specific reasons why it's a perfect fit. What is it about the activities you like? What is it, the things that you enjoy doing? All right. So I'm being interviewed and I say, well, you know, you were a regional manager. You had a lot of people, lots of dollars and budget and all this. And this is you're a customer relationship manager. You don't have any people reporting to you. And I said, thank God. I said, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. I don't need people reporting to me. I've done all that. I've had that sort of thing. My focus now is on this area of customer success. I get to work with my customers. And that's where I love. That's where I thrive. And this is why I want to work here. What is it about this company? Is it the culture? Is it the service? Is it the product? Well, you know, what is it specifically that's innate to you that says, this is the place where I want to be? Because I can thrive and I can be successful and I can be challenged in whatever it might be. Whatever the things that they're looking for you to do is exactly what drives you. And close with this. Close with, I would never accept a position to which I'm not committed. We are directly answering the most common motive on overqualified, and that is short timer. All right. Now let's look at your age. Okay, ages. Hey, it doesn't matter what your age is if you are enthusiastic and interested enough in this job in this company and want to do this kind of work. all right, all of a sudden the age thing kind of just goes by the wayside. It kind of disappears. So I'm focusing on what I can bring to you, focusing on why this is a great place to work, why I can help you achieve these types of achievements and goals and objectives, all right? So this question in particular, if we don't answer the motive, it's probably going to be exactly what people are concerned about in the chat window. Decision is made. They're not going to hire me. This is a huge concern. All right. They're mentioning a concern here. So here's some suggestions on answering that overqualified question. Strengths and weaknesses. Well, let's talk about strengths for a moment. If any of you are familiar with Clifton Strengths, they talk about talents and strengths. I probably should reverse these because talents are your naturally occurring patterns. And then you hone those into a strength where you can show and execute using those talents, all right? So some of the things we can do, some of us can project manage in our sleep. Some of us can do marketing stuff. I mean, it's just flows from us. It's really, some of us are excellent writers. We can take material and we can just write wonderful stuff. And it's just not a big chore or a big deal to do that. That's a good strength. Do they match the job? Do they match the requirements of the job? Do they match what you need to do to be successful in that company with the soft skills? So that's the strengths. But I'll also like to say, if you answer the question with strengths, you just stop with the strengths, we're missing out on a differentiator, which is saying, with these strengths, I can help you achieve these things. So using my background and experience, using my soft skills, help me achieve these things. Strength is very interesting. I was talking with a former pit crew member and person who got a job as director of sales. Said he sat with HR for an hour and a half to talk about hiring for a sales position in the company. And when they finished, they looked at it, he said it was all soft skills. Soft skills outperform hard skills and value when it comes to who am I going to hire. You need to have the experience, okay? You gotta have that, so it's a given, but it's not the huge decision maker. The fact that you're interviewing today says they already feel like you've probably got the experience to do the job. So we certainly don't leave it out, but the soft skills are gonna be key. If they don't like you, if you don't fit that culture, it doesn't matter what the other two are gonna be. And so weaknesses, that's kind of in the negative question category. Show your awareness of it. And so what do I do to manage or develop? Now, one person said, well, I'll continue working on my presentation skills. I've joined Toastmasters. I'm now the president of the Toastmasters Club, or whatever it might be that says, here are things that I'm doing to improve that. The requirement function, where you don't meet a particular requirement. Here's what I'm doing to meet that requirement. Here's what knowledge I have about that. No, I don't know that particular CRM system, but I have used several in the past. I know basically what the functions are. It won't take me long to come up to speed on how to use and navigate in this particular system that you have, those kinds of things. Salary. A lot of us fear the salary question. I would love for you not to have to worry about salary. So what I suggest we do in these kind of questions is, one, do your homework. So this is session 7 stuff to get into salary, because that's, we discussed compensation and that's in session 7 heavily, a lot more details there. But find out what is, for that job, that location, that industry, salary data. So there's some Bureau of Labor Statistics, salary.com, or company provided data sites, and then you can go to Indeed, Glassdoor, but that's usually employee provided information, not to be used as a reason, but to be maybe a checkpoint, because I can put any number in those things that I want to as an employee. So we got a couple of options of how we might want to answer this question. So option 1 is give them a range. If they ask for a number, I still suggest we go ahead and use a range, all right? And then we follow up, says, but I am interested. What is your range? This is important to do in that salary question. We want to get some feedback. We want to find out from them, all right? So option 1 is answering. I know that Mark says, hey, just don't mess with all this other stuff. Just go ahead and give them the range. And I'm comfortable with doing that. I'd rather do it that way. Okay, that's fine. You get to choose which option you want to do. And so option 2, let's see if we can try to delay answering the question. Some of you heard about this. Ideally, we don't want to talk about salary until the offer. I haven't heard of too many cases where that happens. We're going to get that salary question lots of times right up front. But sometimes it would be okay for us to say, would it be all right with you? Again, I'm redirecting. I'm not going to do exactly what they asked. If we spend some more time talking about the duties, responsibilities, the achievements you want to make, the goals and objectives, how can I be of value here to the company? But I am interested. What is your range? All right. So I'll still ask. I'm going to give a reason not to answer it now. And then if they say, yeah, well, let's talk more, then you start talking about those things you just mentioned. So, okay, well, let's talk about what are your expectations? So if you haven't had that question, what's the characteristics of a person to be successful in this role? If you haven't asked that question, now's a great time to start asking for those things if you haven't done that sort of thing. And there's a whole bunch of things that we can do. Salary is not the most important. I would not use the word benefits. That's a kind of a trigger word for a negative. Just use total package, which includes everything. Because sometimes, some people will say, well, what benefits do you have? That's one of the questions we ask. And I say, well, that tells me that you're more interested in the benefits than the job and the company and all that kind of stuff. Tells me you got to have benefits. Well, you know what? It's true. We all need the benefits. It is a high priority on our list. Now's not the time to bring it up. Let's get the offer. Let's get the list of benefits. Let's evaluate those things, and then we can discuss that stuff. All right. All right. Now the last I'm going to talk about is the kind of these off the wall questions. How would you unload a plane full of jelly beans? Stack pennies is high. What kind of tree would you be? Anybody want to jump in and tell me why people are asking these kind of questions? Or any of you who were interviewers, hiring people, and asked these kind of questions, what were you looking for? Why would you ask this?
Well, you're doing that so you can find out how they think.
Okay.
So if you have a sense of creativity or just want to, see a sense of humor.
All right. All right, how you think, how you process sense of humor, something like that. Humor is really great in an interview. It's only one requirement. They have to think it's funny too. Okay. So you might need to figure out a little bit about what's humorous for them. All right. So here's kind of some ways to approach this sort of thing. Number one, pause. And this is something I really recommend for everything, because if you can pause, take your breath a little bit, not a sigh, but a breath, clears your mind, helps reduce the anxiety, formulate your response, and then give a nice, clear, concise answer is much stronger to the interviewer, the hiring manager, anybody, than just starting to talk, okay? So that's number one. Easy to do when you don't have an answer yet. Perhaps we should ask some questions before we start answering, because this is what people are kind of looking for, all right? Say, well, let me ask you this. Well, what kind of plane are you talking about? Is this a Cessna or a 747? All right. So, this is what salespeople do. This is what customer service people do. This is how you try to find out what customer needs are and things like that. And so somebody just comes to me with this question as well. I need a little bit more information. Can you ask those kinds of things? All right. So for the Empire State Building, a little bit of humor comes in. Are the pennies flat or on edge? Are they heads or tails? Okay. Something that talks about that. But they want to know. So, okay. It would impress people to know that it's about 1,400 feet. And you said, gee, I know it's about 1,400 feet high. And so I am actually thinking about how to answer the question out loud. They are seeing the process. They're seeking the thinking that I am going through to do this. And that's why we want to answer it that way. They don't want to just hear us come back and say, I would have all the elementary school first graders come to the airport and empty the plane. That's how we get rid of the jelly beans. Right? How did you arrive at that decision? So that would be nice to go through when you get that off the wall question. And yet using that humor. I got this from Ross Perot when I was with EDS back then, and they bought us to do all their IT services. And he would often say the general reaction And any time a problem comes up, Jim would form a committee and hire a consultant. So I kind of got that from here because we didn't approach it that way in EDS. But so you say, well, I wouldn't hire a committee, form a committee and hire a consultant to figure this out. I'm an evergreen tree because I don't like leaving a company. So something a little bit that with the humor side of things, but you can't leave it there. Okay, you just can't answer that. Use your humor and then go ahead and answer the question. All right, any questions?
Well, we do have an answer for how many pennies it would take. 287.
I saw your answer, Jeff.
Yeah,
and if somebody, yeah, and you say, well, how'd you know that? It says, well, I did it once. All right. Okay. Mark?
All right, let me get my screen sharing again. And I think we've run out of time, Jeff, right?
Yeah, I mean, you only have a couple more slides, right? I mean,
yeah,
for those who need to drop off, I guess you can drop off, but we're going to keep going here to talk about the confidence part.
Yep. So you want to get to a happy spot. Well, that's a tall ask. Being unemployed, searching for a new job may not all be happy. But when you're in the interview, we talk about this all the time. It's all the time, be all positive frame of mind. And so one way to foster positivity is to think regularly about what you're grateful for. And it can be all kinds of, I just got to note that my internet connection was unstable. Do you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, you paused for a second, but I think you've come back okay.
Okay. And these can be very small things, but grateful for good weather, or grateful for a especially tasty meal, or for making it 31 years in your marriage. But this is a good practice to get into, is to start thinking about the things that you're grateful for. And being unemployed or being in job search is an opportunity to find something even better. And I think I've told some of you who've heard me speak before that when I got laid off, I also laid off a bunch of people, and in 2 of the 3 cases it was about 50 to 60 people each time. And I kept in touch with them, and all of them landed, and these layoffs occurred in the middle of difficult financial times, like, kind of like we are now, the recession in 2002 and then 2007. And they've all landed. So I have a lot of confidence. I have a lot of personal confidence that you will land as well, and you need to get to that point yourself, that you have confidence that this process is going to work for you. And certainly doing what you're doing and coming to learn how to interview well is one of the steps you can take, and it's something you can be grateful for as well. You also want to demonstrate empathy in your interview, and usually that's empathy for former employers, meaning you understood the thing they needed to do, which was reduce their expenses or reduce their staff. In some cases, that might be hard to justify, but get on that side of it. My last job, they closed down the Dallas-Fort Worth office, and 6 months later they opened up an office in India to do development work. So that's a little bit hard to swallow, but the grateful thing about that is that I had an opportunity to move on with my life, because they weren't going to be able to afford all the people we had in Dallas, and their solution was to outsource some of that work to an Indian outfit. And so that's what they did. And I understand it from a business perspective, and you need to get that perspective as well. And in a second, I'm going to show you, the top 10 things that employers are looking for. And one of them is business acumen. And so you can demonstrate your empathy and your business acumen by stating your understanding that the company did what they needed to do, to keep going. I got to tell you, it's a difficult situation. You're in a difficult situation when you don't have enough money and you need to cut people. So I've had to do it twice. And, you know, there's not a good way to do that, right? How do you decide? And two of my situations, it was like just carve off a whole department. But you know, others make different choices, a few here and a few there. You want to know yourself, okay? So know yourself and the environment you thrive in particular. So somebody posted up a question about a job they applied for, or maybe even interviewed for, and they ran into the boss, the hiring manager at a conference or something, and he mentioned he was looking to hire someone who was 30 to 40 years old. And that was, you know, now he was questioning whether he wanted to go to work for that company. Well, probably not. And informational interviewing and asking around, networking is a good way to find out if that's the kind of environment that they have, if that's their culture, okay? So you need to know the environment you thrive in, and that will help you in your confidence. Here's a good one. Be proud of your achievements and your expertise. Now, hard skills, you know, like tools that you've used, in particular, those age out, right? Because tools are always being replaced. The new generation of software that does something extra special, you know, are always age. So those tools age out, but the achievements, the things that you achieved in the context of the tools that were used at the time and the skills that were available, those never age out, okay? So you've probably been told to put 10 years or 15 years of information on your resume, but you may have achievements that go back farther than that. And so those are still valuable, and you may want to put those work places in your other, what's the title on the resume? Other relevant experience. So you can have some context to bring those up in the interview. But achievements are timeless, and what you learned and what you were able to achieve, you know, 20, 25 years ago is still important if it's relevant to the job, okay? Also, your soft skills are important, and Walt gave a great example of the sales director who sat down with HR, and, you know, in the end, their list of important things that they wanted to find in the candidate were all soft skills. And so don't be afraid to talk about those, and be confident if you have good soft skills that they were going to help you get through to another landing. And then finally, if you guys get a chance to hear Jay Fusaro speak, I'm sorry, wrong Jay. If you get a chance to hear Jay Arbetter speak, and he speaks about networking, as part of his networking story, he talks about how you approach networking. And what he really says in a nutshell is that no one knows your past. No one knows that, you know, that you got laid off necessarily. No one knows that you got turned down for a job yesterday. No one knows your past. Part of it is you're always you're always acting, okay? But no one knows your past, so be positive all the time. You meet someone new, be positive. And then the other thing he brings up, he tells a story about his own personal experience of, is that life is full of second chances, okay? Second and third and fourth and fifth chances. So if something unfortunate has happened to you in terms of being unemployed, I know you get a second chance, and if that doesn't work out, you get another chance. And it's not one and done. It's not school, you know. It's not just one, you know, pass the test, you know, take the test, you pass or fail. It's over and over and over. You always have a second chance.
Jay Arbetter will be our Networking Monday speaker on April 5th. So in 2 weeks, you'll be able to hear him on Monday at 1 o'clock Central.
Jay Arbetter. Oh yeah, that was good. Thanks, Jeff. He's really good speaker. Okay, here we go. And I'll just put these up for you guys to read. I just searched on Google and somehow found this list that I thought was very impactful, you know, to having confidence. So, and you're probably not going to have all of these, but look through that list and see which ones you have. You know, a proven track record as an achiever, especially achievers that match up what their greatest wants and needs. And this is why you asked the question right up at the beginning of the interview. You do have the job description. Sometimes they're accurate. Sometimes they're old and out of date. So you need to ask the question and find out how well you match up. Number 2 on the list is business savvy. And I just mentioned that. Intelligence, they call it, but if you dig into it, it means business savvy or business acumen or management savvy. And the best way to describe this is that you kind of understand how business works. You understand how businesses make their money. You have that kind of perspective. And so that's what employers are looking for. I'm not going to read the other ones. There's some good ones there, you know, and you can take a look at them later. I know we can leave them up as long as we can, but I think Jeff needs us to move on. So I'm going to end right there.
That's it?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Hold on, let me do a couple of things here. All right, well, Mark, Walt, thank you very much for everything, for what you shared today. Great information. Just want to remind everybody, we've got other training sessions coming up. We're putting on training every Monday through Friday now, 5 days a week. So please be sure to join us. Tomorrow on Effective Resume Thursday, we'll be sharing resume tips and tricks, and you'll have an opportunity to win a free month of jobscan.co, a great way to compare your resume against a job description. We'll give away a month's use of that you can use as often as you want. This Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group meeting at Friday morning at 9:30, Effective Networking with Jay Fusero. Jay is another excellent speaker on networking. He's got a great book out. There's not one sentence in his book that I disagree with on how to do a job search. He's an ex-CFO, so he's very analytical in his process and what he does. So join us. You'll really enjoy his presentation this Friday at 9:30. Next Monday, our speaker is Bob Maher. He's going to talk about taking the chill out of cold calls. You know, networking is picking up the phone and calling somebody, and a lot of people have call reluctance. So it'll be a very interesting talk next Monday. Next Tuesday, our speaker is going to, next Tuesday morning, I'll be doing a presentation about Career DFW and Career USA. I'm presenting it for the senior source, but I'll put out anybody is invited. It'll be on the Facebook page and it will be on Zoom, and anybody, I'll put the links out Monday or Tuesday morning early. I'll put the link out for those if anybody's interested in joining. It is up on the Career DFW and Career USA calendar under free training. Monday at 1 o'clock, our LinkedIn seminar will be LinkedIn Search Engine Optimization. And then next Wednesday, the final session of our 13-part session, Avoiding Interview Crashes. So join us next Wednesday for the common things. And then during the month of April, these are our 4 guest speakers: Jack Bick, Tony Bashara, Paul Walsh, and Carol Bukel. And they'll be talking about, different subjects on interviewing. So it'll be an interesting time to join. So please, join us. And then back again in May, we'll start up this 13-part series, hopefully for the last time, and then we can get back in person after that. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel to go back and view and see the whole presentation. It'll be up on YouTube in a couple hours. It takes YouTube a couple hours to process the videos I uploaded. So please check each page. Please follow us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really, really would appreciate it. On the YouTube channel, it looks something like this, the Career USA YouTube channel. And don't click on the video, but down where you see that green arrow, click on the green arrow which says View Full Playlist, and then up will come a list from the most current going backwards of all the sessions. You can find the topic that you want to go back and watch, and they're all there for you. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, please join the Career USA mailing list. You'll get 6 or 7 emails a week. You'll never be spammed because it's only from me. Career USA, +, subscribe at groups.io. I'll put that email address up here at the very end so you can go send an email to that to join. Please remember, Career DFW, we're just a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Walt's a volunteer, Mark's a volunteer. We're just here to help you land your next great opportunity. So please consider making a donation when you land your next job. Career DFW, we survive on donations. I'm a volunteer also. I don't get paid to do this. We're just giving our time, but the donations pay for Zoom, it pays for our web names, our web hosting, and other expenses that we can't get donated. So please consider making a donation. Thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow, Friday, or one day next week. And there's that email address if you want. Mark and Walt, thank you again.